Elena Brooks's shift at the Anchor Diner ended at midnight, but her hands didn't stop shaking until 12:47 a.m. She counted her tips in the alley behind the kitchen, the one that smelled like fryer grease and wet cardboard. $43. 7 crumpled fives, 6 singles, and $2.60 in quarters that stuck together from dried Coke. Enough for the bus pass, enough for top ramen and off-brand peanut butter, enough to keep the lights on for another week in her studio apartment in Rainier Valley. She pulled her peacoat tighter. The zipper had broken last winter. She'd safety pinned it shut, but Seattle's January wind off Elliott Bay didn't care about her repairs. It cut through the cheap polyester blend like she was wearing tissue paper. The shortcut through Pier 19 would save her 10 minutes. 10 minutes meant 10 fewer minutes, standing at the bus stop where some drunk tech bro might decide she looked friendly enough to harass. The harbor was dead this time of night. Just rusted shipping containers stacked like a giant's forgotten Legos, and seagulls fighting over pizza. Crusts near the old cannery building. The cobblestones were slick from the mist. Her Skechers, the ones she'd gotten on clearance at Ross for $22.99, squeaked with every step. That's when she saw the kid, face down on the pavement, one arm twisted underneath his chest. His other hand still clutching a phone. Elena almost kept walking. Seattle had taught her that lesson early. Mind your business, keep your head down, don't get involved. Another drunk college kid, another trust fund brat who'd wandered too far from Capitol Hill. But then she saw the shoes. Air Jordan 1 Retros. Obsidian blue. The real ones, not the knockoffs they sold at the swap meet. $300 minimum. And the blazer, navy with gold stitching and an embroidered crest, St. Clement's Academy. The private school where tuition cost more than she'd make in a year slinging hash browns. Shit, Elena muttered. She dropped to her knees. Pier 19's concrete soaked through her jeans instantly, the cold water biting into her skin. She rolled him over, and his head lolled to the side. 15, maybe 16, face pale as printer paper. His breath came in shallow, uneven gasps, the kind that made her nursing school instincts scream before her brain caught up. His lips had a bluish tint, hypoglycemia, diabetic shock. She'd seen it twice during her clinicals at Harborview, before she dropped out, before her mom's kidneys failed and the student loans became impossible, and she'd traded scrubs for a stained apron. The kid's phone was still in his hand, screen unlocked, one contact at the top of his favorites list, marked with a blue heart, Dad. Elena's frozen thumb hit the call button, one ring. A man's voice sliced through the silence. Deep, controlled, corporate. But underneath that polish, she heard something raw. Colton, are you all right? Elena's voice cracked. I'm not Colton. My name is Elena. Your son, he's unconscious at Pier 19 near the old Pacific Cannery building. His breathing's shallow and his skin's cold. I think his blood sugar crashed. Silence. Then the rapid-fire click of a keyboard. What's his pulse? She pressed 2 fingers to the side of his neck, felt the flutter beneath cold skin. Weak, maybe 60. Is he seizing? No. Don't move him. The man's voice shifted into something harder. Command mode, CEO mode. I'm sending your location to emergency services. I'm 8 minutes out. Wait. Elena's heart hammered. Does he have a glucagon pen? Insulin? Anything in his bag? The man's voice sharpened. Who are you? Someone who knows what diabetic shock looks like. A pause. She could hear him breathing. Hear the roar of an engine revving, tires on wet asphalt. There's a red medical bag in his backpack. Glucagon auto-injector, you know how to use it? Elena's hands shook. She hadn't touched medical equipment since her mother's last trip to the ER, since she'd held the same type of injector and watched the paramedics shake their heads anyway. Yeah, she whispered. I know how. Then do it. Stay on the line. I'm coming. She found the backpack. Unzipped the front pocket. Found the red nylon case with the white cross. Inside, the auto-injector sealed in plastic. Her fingers fumbled with the wrapper, ripped it open, found the kid's thigh through his expensive jeans, and jammed the needle in, pressed the plunger, and waited. The phone line stayed open. She could hear the man breathing, hear the whine of an engine push past legal speed limits, hear the squeal of tires taking a corner too fast. Come on, Elena whispered to the kid, to herself, to whatever god might be listening from the freezing Seattle sky. Come on. The kid's eyelids fluttered. 8 minutes later, headlights cut through the fog at the end of the pier. A black Bentley Continental GT, the kind of car Elena had only seen in movies, stopped 6 feet from where she knelt in the puddle. The door opened before the engine died, and out stepped a man who looked like he'd never waited for anything in his life. The Bentley's door opened before the car fully stopped. Alexander Hale moved like gravity didn't apply to him. 6'2", charcoal Tom Ford suit even at midnight. The kind of face Elena recognized from Forbes magazine covers at the grocery store checkout. Sharp jaw, silver threading through dark hair at the temples, eyes that probably calculated quarterly earnings while he slept. He dropped to his knees beside his son without looking at Elena. Didn't acknowledge her existence. Just pressed 2 fingers to Colton's neck, checking the pulse she'd already confirmed. Colton. His voice cracked. Just once, a hairline fracture in the corporate armor. Colton, can you hear me? The kid's eyelids fluttered. His lips moved, but no sound came out. He's coming around, Elena said quietly. The glucagon's working. But he needs glucose within the next 5 minutes, or he'll crash again. Juice box, candy, anything with fast-acting sugar. Alexander's head snapped toward her. His eyes did a 2-second scan. The Anchor Diner polo, with the coffee stain on the collar. The jeans with the hole in the left knee. The Skechers held together with duct tape she'd color-matched with a Sharpie. She watched him calculate her net worth in real time. You administered the injection? Yes. Are you a paramedic? I was a nursing student, and she didn't add before. I dropped out to work, double shifts because my mom's medical bills ate my financial aid. Sirens wailed in the distance. The sound bounced off the shipping containers, getting louder. Alexander pulled out an iPhone 15 Pro Max, the one that cost $1, $200, and typed something one-handed while keeping his other hand on Colton's shoulder. Ambulance is 2 minutes out, he said, then quieter, like the words were being pulled from somewhere deep. Thank you. Elena stood. Her knees screamed. The cold water had soaked through to her skin, and she'd be feeling this tomorrow. He'll be okay. Just make sure they check his glucose levels every hour tonight, and figure out why a 15-year-old was alone on a dock at midnight. She turned to leave. Wait. She stopped, didn't turn around. She heard the sound of leather, expensive leather, the kind that whispered instead of creaked. Alexander pulled out a Gucci wallet, slid out $500 bills, crisp and sequential like he'd gotten them fresh from the bank, extended them toward her. Elena stared at the money. It was more than she made in 2 weeks. It would cover February rent, her bus pass, the electric bill she'd been dodging for 3 weeks, maybe even a winter coat with a zipper that actually worked. She didn't take it. I didn't do this for money, Mr. Hale. Alexander Hale. Of course. Hale Technologies. The cloud security empire that protected half of Silicon Valley's data. The guy who owned this building, her bus passed every morning. The one with his name on it, in letters 6 feet tall. I don't need a reward, Elena said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I need to catch the last bus home. Before he could respond, headlights swept across the pier. A silver Audi Q7 pulled up behind the Bentley. The driver's door opened and a woman stepped out, late 30s, cream-colored Max Mara coat that probably cost 3 months of Elena's rent. Louboutin heels, the red soles flashed as she walked, clicking on the wet cobblestones like a metronome, counting down to judgment. Vivienne Ashford. She rushed toward Colton, but her eyes landed on Elena first. A flicker of confusion, then assessment, then something colder. Alexander. What on earth? She stopped mid-sentence, took in the scene, her nephew on the ground. The ambulance pulling up. Elena, standing there in her wet, stained uniform. Is Colton all right? He's stable. Alexander stood, brushing off his knees. His pants probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe. Thanks to her. Vivienne's smile appeared. Perfect. Practiced. Porcelain. How fortunate. Her gaze dropped to Elena's Anchor Diner polo, lingered on the name tag. Elena, happy to serve you. Are you with the Shelter Outreach Program? I chair the Committee for Downtown Emergency Services. Elena's jaw tightened. No, I'm the person who kept your nephew from dying on a dock. Of course. Of course. Vivienne's voice dripped with the kind of sympathy rich people used on service workers. We're so grateful for your civic duty. She touched Alexander's arm, proprietary, familiar. I'll ride with Colton in the ambulance. You should get cleaned up before the press catches wind of this. You know how they are. She guided Alexander toward the ambulance like Elena had already evaporated. The paramedics loaded Colton onto a gurney. One of them glanced at Elena. You the one who gave the glucagon? Yeah. Good call. Probably saved his life. Vivienne's heels clicked faster. Elena watched them load Colton into the ambulance, watched the Bentley and Audi fall in line behind it, red taillights bleeding into the rain and fog, watched the convoy of wealth disappear like she'd imagined the whole thing. She pulled her peacoat tighter, the safety-pinned one, and started walking toward the bus stop. $43, in tips. No reward, no thank you that actually mattered. Just another Tuesday night in a city that didn't see people like her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. Unknown number, Seattle area code. The text message loaded. Ms. Brooks, I'd like to speak with you. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. The address below. Alexander Hale. An address in Magnolia followed. The neighborhood where the median home price was $2. $4 million. The part of Seattle she'd only seen through bus windows on her way to clean houses in high school. Elena stared at the message. Behind her, a ferry horn moaned across Elliott Bay. low and mournful, like the city itself was asking a question she didn't know how to answer. She texted back one word, okay. Then she walked to the bus stop and waited 23 minutes in the rain. The Hale estate wasn't a house. It was a declaration of war against poverty. Glass and steel perched on Magnolia Bluff like a spaceship that decided Seattle was worth colonizing. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. A circular driveway with a fountain. Actual marble cherubs spitting water that probably cost more than every apartment in Elena's building combined. She stood at the iron gate at 9:53 a.m., pressing the intercom button for the third time. A woman's voice crackled through. Name? Elena Brooks, Mr. Hale asked me to. The gate swung open before she finished. The driveway was longer than her entire block. Elena walked it, her Skechers crunching on imported gravel that looked like it had been individually selected for aesthetic perfection. Inside, the house was colder than the January morning outside. Marble floors, white walls, everything spotless and silent like a museum after hours, the kind of quiet that made you whisper even when you were alone. A woman in a gray uniform appeared from a doorway. Mr. Hale is in his study. Follow me. Elena followed. Her wet sneakers, still damp from last night, squeaked on the marble with every step. The sound echoed through the hallways like an announcement. Poor person walking, poor person walking. The study had more books than the Seattle Public Library's main branch. Leather-bound editions behind glass. First editions, probably. The kind people bought to look smart, not to read. Alexander sat behind a desk, made of dark wood and chrome, typing on a MacBook Pro. He didn't look up. Ms. Brooks, sit. She sat in a chair that cost more than her monthly rent. He closed the laptop, folded his hands. Those calculating eyes locked onto hers like targeting software. Colton's endocrinologist confirmed your assessment last night was accurate. His blood glucose was 41. Another 10 minutes and we'd be having a very different conversation. Elena said nothing. His type 1 diabetes developed 18 months ago, shortly after his mother passed from pancreatic cancer. He's had 3 severe hypoglycemic episodes since diagnosis. 2 required hospitalization. Last night would have been the 3rd. I'm sorry about your wife, Elena said quietly. Alexander's jaw tightened. A muscle twitched near his temple. The medical staff I've hired have been insufficient. Colton refuses to communicate with them, skips meals to avoid insulin injections. He's a 15-year-old boy, in active rebellion against a disease that could kill him. He slid a manila folder across the desk. I'm offering you a position, live-in medical supervisor. Your primary responsibility is monitoring Colton's condition and ensuring compliance with his treatment protocol. Secondary, helping him accept his diagnosis. Elena opened the folder, saw the contract, saw the salary line. Her stomach dropped. $120,000 per year, plus room and board, health insurance, dental. That's more than a registered nurse makes, she said. You're not a nurse. Your insurance against my son dying because I'm too occupied with quarterly earnings calls to notice he's fading. Brutal honesty. Elena could respect that. Why me? Because in the ambulance last night, he asked if the waitress with the cold hands was okay. He hasn't asked about another human being in 6 months. Elena looked at the number again, at the escape route from poverty it represented, at the chance to finish nursing school without drowning in debt. I need time to think. No. Alexander's voice was flat. I need an answer now. I have a board meeting in 40 minutes and a son who's 1 missed meal away from a coma. Yes or no, Miss Brooks? The door opened. Vivienne swept in carrying a leather Bottega Veneta portfolio. She wore a cream Chanel suit, the kind with the little chain weights in the hem, so it hung perfectly. Alexander, darling, the Hale Foundation gala contracts need your signature before... She stopped, saw Elena. Her smile froze like windows encountering a fatal error. Oh, you're still here, Ms. Brooks is considering a position on my household staff, Alexander said. How lovely. Vivienne's eyes traveled over Elena's clearance rack Target jeans in the same peacoat from last night, still safety-pinned shut. Though, dear, if you accept, you'll need to dress more appropriately. We maintain certain standards in this household. I'd be happy to provide you with a list of approved vendors. There's a wonderful consignment shop in Northgate that caters to... I keep kids from dying, Ms. Ashford. Elena stood slowly, met Vivienne's eyes dead on. I'll worry about my wardrobe after I make sure your nephew sees his 16th birthday. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Vivienne's smile sharpened into something with edges. Of course. How noble of you. Alexander cleared his throat. Do we have an agreement, Ms. Brooks? Elena looked at the contract, at the number that could erase 2 years of desperation, at Vivienne's perfectly manicured contempt that said you don't belong here and you never will. She thought about her studio apartment where the heat only worked on Tuesdays, about the bus stop where she'd waited in the rain last night, about the nursing degree she'd abandoned because choosing between food and tuition wasn't really a choice. Yeah, Elena said. We do. She signed. Vivienne's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind those cold eyes. The look a predator gets when it identifies prey that might fight back. As Elena stood to leave, Vivienne leaned close, her Chanel number. 5 perfume, $150 per ounce, filled the space between them. She whispered, "Girls like you don't last in houses like this. Enjoy it while it's warm, dear." Then she smiled and walked away, heels clicking on marble like a countdown timer. Elena watched her go. Behind her, Alexander said, "You start Monday, I'll have a room prepared." Elena nodded, walked out through those echoing hallways, past the fountain, through the gate that closed behind her with a sound like a prison door. She pulled out her phone and texted her landlord, giving 30 days' notice, moving out end of February. Then she walked to the bus stop and rode home through a city that looked different now, like she'd crossed a border she couldn't uncross. Elena's new room was bigger than her entire studio apartment in Rainier Valley. King bed with a white duvet that probably had a thread count higher than her credit score. Private bathroom with heated floors. A walk-in closet the size of her old kitchen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay where ferries crawled across gray water like slow-moving insects. Her belongings, 2 duffel bags and a cardboard box sealed with packing tape, sat in the corner like evidence of a crime. She unpacked slowly. Work polos from the Anchor Diner, 1 pair of decent jeans without holes, the black pants she'd worn to her mom's funeral 2 years ago, a hoodie from Seattle Central Community College with a coffee stain she'd never been able to wash out. Everything she owned fit in 3 dresser drawers. The cardboard box sat on the bed. She'd written mom's stuff on the side in Sharpie, then crossed it out, then written it again. She'd been carrying it from apartment to apartment for 2 years without opening it. She peeled back the packing tape. Inside, her mother's scrubs from Harborview Medical Center. A coffee mug that said World's Okayest Nurse. 3 romance paperbacks with cracked spines. A tube of chapstick, reading glasses, and at the bottom, wrapped in a grocery bag, the stethoscope. Litman cardiology tray. Navy blue. The rubber tubing worn soft from 20 years of use. Her mother had bought it with her first paycheck as an ER nurse in 1998, had used it through every shift until diabetes destroyed her kidneys and forced early retirement. Elena had carried it through her first year of nursing school like a talisman. Like if she held it long enough, she'd absorb her mother's competence through osmosis. She hadn't touched it since the funeral. Since she'd packed it away and dropped out of school and started slinging hash browns to pay off the medical bills her mom's insurance wouldn't cover, now she held it. The tubing was still warm, somehow, like it remembered being alive. A knock interrupted her. Colton stood in the doorway, skinny, pale, 15 going on exhausted. He wore a Nirvana t-shirt that was 2 sizes too big, and sweatpants. "You're the waitress," he said flatly. "Elena, you don't look like a nurse." "I'm not. I'm the person who's supposed to keep you from passing out in random places." He almost smiled. "Almost. My dad pays you to babysit me. He pays me to keep you alive. Big difference." Colton walked in uninvited, looked around at the room that used to be something else. "This was my mom's office. She used to work here when she couldn't sleep. I'd wake up at like 2 a.m. and hear her typing." The air went cold. "I didn't know," Elena said quietly. "Nobody tells you anything in this place." He sat on the edge of her bed, picked up the stethoscope. "They just move things around and pretend like the empty spaces don't scream." Elena sat beside him, not too close, gave him room to breathe. "What was she like?" Colton's voice cracked. She remembered stuff. Like, I mentioned wanting to try surfing once, just once, watching some YouTube video, and 2 months later there's a surfboard in my room, and plane tickets to Costa Rica. He wiped his eyes fast, angry at the tears. Now I mention I'm hungry and nobody even looks up. Elena pulled out her phone, opened the Notes app. "What are you doing?" Colton asked. "Writing it down." Colton mentioned he's hungry at 10:47 a.m., so I don't forget. He stared at her. "That's weird." "Yeah, well, I'm not your mom. I'm not trying to replace her. I'm just someone who's going to try not to suck at this job." She handed him a granola bar from her backpack, the kind she bought in bulk at Costco, 12 bars for $6.99. "Eat. Your dad said you skipped breakfast." He took it, didn't open it. "Vivienne says you're not going to last." "Vivienne doesn't sign my paychecks, and she acts like she owns this place." "She doesn't own you, though." Colton looked at her properly for the first time, really looked. "Why'd you help me that night? You didn't know who I was." Elena shrugged. You needed help. I knew how to give it. That's the whole equation. Most people don't stop. Most people aren't worth knowing. Colton opened the granola bar, took a bite, made a face. This tastes like cardboard. Welcome to my entire diet for the last 2 years. He almost laughed. Not quite, but close enough. For the first time in 6 months, Alexander, standing in the hallway where neither of them noticed him, saw his son's shoulders relax, saw the tension leave his jaw, saw something that looked almost like a sill. He stood there for 3 full minutes, just watching, then walked away before they could see him. That night, Elena was unpacking the last box when she heard voices in the hallway. Vivienne's heels, click, click, click. Alexander's measured tone, too quiet to make out words. Then Vivienne, sharp and clear, "She's a phase, Alexander, a charity project. Don't confuse gratitude for compatibility. She's helping Colton. She's a waitress with a hero complex. The novelty will wear off." A pause. "For both of you." Vivienne, "I loved Catherine too. I know you're lonely. But hiring the help to fill the void your wife left, that's not healing. That's desperation." Footsteps, the click of heels fading down the hallway. Elena sat on her bed in a room that used to belong to a dead woman. She picked up the stethoscope, pressed it to her own chest, listened to her heartbeat. Steady, strong, still fighting. She set it on the nightstand where she could see it, a reminder that she'd survived worse than Vivienne Ashford's poison. 3 weeks into the job, the call came at 1:14 p.m. Elena was in downtown Seattle, 23 floors up in the Hale Technologies building. Alexander had left his lunch on the kitchen counter again. Grilled chicken and quinoa in a glass Tupperware container that probably cost more than her old toaster. She'd taken the bus, waited in the marble lobby, rode the elevator up with people in suits who didn't look at her. The receptionist's phone rang. Her face went tight. "Ms. Brooks, there's a call for you, St. Clement's Academy." Elena's stomach dropped. She took the phone. "This is Elena." The school nurse's voice came through, professional but strained. "Ms. Brooks." Colton's blood sugar dropped during PE class. "He's stable now, but he's refusing insulin. He's asking for you, says he won't let anyone else touch him." "I'm coming." She hung up. Found Alexander through the glass wall of conference room B, mid-presentation to a dozen venture capitalists. Graphs on the screen, his voice confident and controlled. She knocked, opened the door without waiting. Every head turned. "Mr. Hale." She didn't apologize, didn't explain. Just caught his eyes and mouthed 2 words, "Colton, now." Alexander stood immediately. "Gentlemen, we'll resume in 20 minutes. The drive to St. Clement's Academy took 12 minutes. Alexander drove his Bentley, like traffic laws were suggestions for people with less money. He hit 70 on Elliott Avenue, ran a yellow light, turning onto Denny. "What happened?" he asked. "Blood sugar dropped during PE. He's refusing treatment." Why?" "Because he's 15, and he's pissed off at a disease that won't let him be normal." Alexander's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. "I don't know how to reach him anymore." Then let me try." St. Clement's Academy sat on 12 acres of manicured grounds in Capitol Hill. Red brick buildings, an actual bell tower, the kind of school where they called it campus instead of school, and the cafeteria was a dining hall. They found Colton in the nurse's office, sitting on the exam table, arms crossed. The school nurse hovered nearby, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and nervous hands. "Colton," Alexander started. His voice had that CEO tone, command mode. "I'm fine." Your blood sugar's 52. You're not fine." "I said I'm fine." Elena stepped between them, looked at Colton. "Outside now." Colton blinked. "What?" "You heard me. We're taking a walk." The nurse protested. He needs to not be stared at like a lab rat," Elena said. "We'll be back in 5 minutes." She walked out, didn't look back. Colton followed. They sat on the stone steps outside the main building. Rain misted down, the kind of Seattle rain that wasn't quite rain, just perpetual dampness in the air. Elena pulled a juice box from her bag. The cheap kind from Safeway, 6 for $2.99. "Drink." I don't care what you want. Drink or pass out. Pick one." He took it. Stabbed the straw through the foil hole. Drank slowly. "They all treat me like I'm broken," he said quietly. "The nurse, the teachers, my dad, like I'm gonna shatter if they say the wrong thing. You're not broken. You're diabetic. There's a difference. Doesn't feel different." Elena pulled the stethoscope from her bag, the navy blue Litman she'd started carrying again. She'd been bringing it everywhere, to the grocery store, to Colton's doctor appointments, to the Hale estate, like wearing her mother's armor. She pressed it to his chest. "Know what I hear?" My heartbeat. A heart that's working, lungs that are breathing, a body that's fighting to keep you here even when you're trying to sabotage it. She pulled the earpieces out. Your mom's gone. That's not fair, but you're still here. And some of us would kill for one more day with the people we lost. Colton's eyes filled. He wiped them fast, angry at the tears. I miss her. I know. It hurts all the time. I know that too. They sat in silence, rain misted, the juice box emptied. A crow landed on the stairs below them, pecking at a discarded granola bar wrapper. My mom used to say pain is just proof you're alive, Elena said. Dead things don't hurt. That's depressing. Yeah, she wasn't great at inspirational speeches. Colton almost laughed. When they walked back inside, he let the nurse check his blood sugar without protest, let her give him the insulin shot, ate the graham crackers she offered. Alexander watched from the doorway, watched Elena hand his son a granola bar from her bag, the cardboard-tasting kind Colton always complained about, and watched Colton take it like it was communion. On the drive home, Alexander said, "How did you do that?" "Do what?" "Get through to him." "I've been trying for 18 months. Elena shrugged. "I didn't fix him. I just didn't treat him like he needed fixing." Alexander glanced at her. Something shifted in his expression. The CEO armor cracked. "You're good at this." "At what?" "Seeing people." Elena looked out the window at Seattle sliding past, at the coffee shops and tech startups and people walking dogs who cost more than her monthly rent. "Comes with the territory," she said. "When you've got nothing, you get real good at noticing who's got everything and still can't figure out how to be happy." Alexander was quiet for 3 blocks. Then, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on him." "I haven't known him long enough to give up yet. Most people would have walked away by now." Vivienne thinks... He stopped. "Vivienne thinks I'm a gold digger who got lucky." She didn't say that. She didn't have to. That night, Vivienne found Alexander in his study. She wore a black Dior dress, heels that added 3 inches, hair pulled back in a style that screamed, "I had a stylist do this. I heard your employee caused a scene." "Colton's school today," she said. Alexander didn't look up from his laptop. She prevented a crisis. She overstepped, removed him from medical supervision without authorization. What if something had happened? Something was happening. She handled it. She's blurring lines, Alexander, acting like family when she's staff. Maybe the lines needed blurring. Vivienne's smile froze. She set her wine glass down on his desk, a 2015 Chateau Margaux that cost $400 a bottle. "Be careful," she said softly. "Girls like her always want more than they're offered. And men like you always convince yourselves gratitude is something deeper." She left. Alexander sat alone in his study, thought about Elena on those steps with Colton, about the way she'd pressed that stethoscope to his son's chest like she was listening for hope instead of heartbeats, about the way Colton had smiled. 2 days later, a package arrived for Elena. Large white box, tied with black ribbon, her name on the label in calligraphy. Inside, a black dress, white apron, white collar, a maid's uniform. The note read, "For the Hale Foundation Gala, per household protocol. All staff must attend in approved attire. VA." Elena held the uniform, looked at herself in the mirror. Vivienne had just made her first real move. And Elena had 2 weeks to decide how to respond. The Hale Foundation Gala was Seattle's social event of the season. $5,000 a plate. The Four Seasons grand ballroom draped in white silk and crystal chandeliers that threw rainbow fractals across marble floors. A who's who of tech billionaires, old money families, and politicians who smiled with too many teeth. Elena stood in the service hallway wearing the maid's uniform Vivienne had sent. Black dress that hit mid-thigh. White apron, white collar that buttoned too tight around her neck. She looked like she'd stepped out of a 1950s fantasy some rich man had about the help knowing their place. She'd tried to refuse. Had texted Alexander, still in Shanghai for a week on business, about the household protocol Vivienne cited. He'd responded, "Trust Vivienne on event logistics, focus on Colton." So here she was, holding a tray of champagne flutes that cost $80 each. Colton found her behind the service doors. He wore a tuxedo that made him look older than 15. He took one look at her uniform and his face went red. "Why are you dressed like that?" Vivienne said all household staff attend in uniform. You're not a maid." "Tonight, I am." "This is bullshit." His voice cracked. "This is her bullshit." Language. "She's trying to humiliate you." Elena forced a smile. "She's trying. Doesn't mean it's working." But it was, and they both knew it. Vivienne appeared in the doorway, wearing a silver Marchesa gown that probably cost more than a Honda Civic. Diamonds at her throat, hair swept up in a style that required 3 hours in a professional. "Elena, darling," she said, voice dripping honey. "We need more champagne at the donor table. Northwest corner. Be quick about it." Elena's jaw clenched, but she took the tray. She walked into the ballroom. 300 heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Isn't that Alexander Hale's son's... What? Nanny? I heard she was a waitress he hired off the street after some incident. How charitable of him. Elena set the champagne on the table, turned to leave. Wait. Vivienne's voice cut through the murmurs. She stood at the microphone on the small stage, spotlight finding her like she was born under it. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention. Her smile was radiant. Perfect. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the unseen heroes who make events like this possible. She gestured toward Elena, our dedicated staff who work tirelessly behind the scenes. Elena here, for example, has been an absolute godsend to the Hale family, from the streets, quite literally, to our home. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Light, condescending. A true Cinderella story, wouldn't you say? More laughter. Alexander has always had such a generous heart, taking in strays, offering second chances to those less fortunate. Vivienne's voice was silk over steel. Let's give our hardworking staff a round of applause, shall we? The ballroom erupted, not in genuine appreciation. In the kind of applause you give a performing dog. Polite, pitying, poisonous. Elena stood frozen, every eye in the room measuring her, judging her, seeing exactly what Vivienne wanted them to see. A charity case. A project. Someone who didn't belong. The main doors opened. Alexander walked in. He'd flown back early from Shanghai, still in travel clothes, jeans and a button-down, no tie. His eyes scanned the room. Found Vivienne at the microphone. Found Elena in the maid's uniform. His expression went cold. Stone cold. But he didn't move. He just stood there in the doorway while 300 people applauded his generosity and his late wife's sister turned Elena into a spectacle. Vivienne continued. Elena, dear, I believe there's a spill near the West Bar. Would you mind terribly? The crowd waited. Elena could feel Colton staring from across the room, could feel Alexander's frozen silence, could feel 300 pairs of eyes waiting to see if she'd bend. She walked to the West Bar, found the spill, red wine on white marble, already spreading, got on her knees in her ridiculous uniform and cleaned it with a bar towel while Seattle's elite watched. In this world where karma writes its own stories, these events reflect patterns of cruelty that persist wherever wealth and power collide. Though names, faces, and specifics have been reimagined for this narrative. When she stood, Vivienne was beside her, close enough to whisper. You don't belong here, she said, soft, intimate, lethal. And deep down, beneath all that pride, you know it. Alexander feels grateful. That's not love, dear. That's pity, and pity has an expiration date. Elena said nothing. Vivienne smiled. Enjoy the warmth while it lasts. Elena walked out of the ballroom, past the donors, past the champagne pyramids, past Alexander's paralyzed stare. She made it to the service elevator. Pressed the button, watched the numbers climb. The tears came at floor 7. Elena didn't sleep that night. She sat on her bed, in the room that used to belong to a dead woman, staring at her duffel bag. The same one she'd unpacked 3 weeks ago. Now packed again, she was done. Let Alexander find someone else to save his son. Let Vivienne throw her next gala without a servant to humiliate. Let this whole glass and steel mansion collapse under the weight of its own grief. Elena zipped the bag shut at 2:17 a.m. The knock came at 2:19, soft, hesitant. She opened the door. Colton stood there in sweatpants and a Soundgarden t-shirt. His face was pale, hands shaking. My blood sugar's dropping, he whispered. And I'm scared. Elena grabbed her medical kit. She sat with him until dawn, monitoring his levels, feeding him glucose tabs, the chalky kind that dissolved on your tongue and tasted like sweet cardboard, talking about nothing and everything. He told her about his mom's laugh, about the last trip they took to Vancouver before she got sick, about the guilt he carried for not noticing she was fading. I thought she was just tired, Colton said. His voice cracked. I was too busy being 15 and stupid, playing Xbox while she was dying in the next room. You were a kid. That's not stupid. That's just being a kid. You don't talk like an adult. I'm 24. I'm barely an adult myself. By 6 a.m., his levels stabilized. He fell asleep on her bed, curled on his side like he was 10 instead of 15. Elena sat at the desk, stared at her packed duffel bag. She should leave. Should walk out before Vivienne found another knife to twist. But if she left, Colton would wake up to another person who'd abandon him. Her phone buzzed. Text from Alexander. I need to speak with you. My study. Now. She almost ignored it. Instead, she walked downstairs. Alexander stood at the window overlooking the bay. Still in yesterday's suit, he looked like he hadn't slept either. I owe you an apology, he said without turning. You owe me more than that. He turned. His eyes were bloodshot. I should have intervened last night. You should have stood up for me. Elena's voice shook. You hired me to keep your son alive. I've done that. But I'm not a prop in your family's grief theater. I'm not Vivienne's punching bag. I know. Do you? Because from where I was standing, on my knees scrubbing wine off marble, while your late wife's sister performed for Billionaires, it didn't look like you knew anything except how to freeze. Alexander flinched. Good. He should. What do you want me to do? Elena grabbed her phone. I want you to be the father Colton needs. I want you to see that he's drowning, and throwing money at problems isn't the same as being present. And she walked out. That afternoon, Colton needed help with a statistics project. Something about charitable giving patterns. He pulled up spreadsheets from the Hale Foundation website on his laptop. Elena helped him organize the data into columns. That's when she saw it. Donation amounts that didn't match disbursement records. Fundraising totals that shifted between quarterly reports. Small discrepancies, 2,000 here, 8,000 there. But consistent, methodical. Like someone was skimming and betting nobody would check the math. Is this right? Elena pointed to a column. Colton squinted. I don't know. Vivienne handles all the foundation accounting. She's been CFO since my mom died. Elena's stomach dropped. She took photos with her phone, sent them to her email, started Googling nonprofit embezzlement Washington State and FBI financial crimes reporting. The numbers didn't lie. $340,000 missing over 18 months. That night, Vivienne appeared at Elena's door. She wore Lululemon, the $128 leggings and matching jacket. Fresh from yoga or Pilates or whatever rich women did to justify never breaking a sweat, I heard you had quite the conversation with Alexander this morning. Her smile was sharp. Bold words for an employee? Is there something you need? Just a reminder, dear. You work for this family, you're not part of it. Employees who forget their place tend to find themselves unemployed. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. Vivienne examined her manicure. French tips, professionally done. This family has survived worse than you. She turned to leave. Paused. By the way, I'll be requiring your phone tomorrow morning. Security audit. New household protocol. Her smile widened. I'm sure you understand. She walked away. Heels clicking down the hallway. Elena stared at her phone. At the photos of financial records Vivienne didn't know existed. Vivienne knew, or suspected. Elena forwarded everything to a secondary email. Then she Googled a number she'd hoped she'd never need. Seattle FBI Field Office. Financial Crimes Division. She dialed. A woman answered. Special Agent Morrison. I need to report embezzlement from a nonprofit organization. Can you come in tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.? Elena looked at her door, at the hallway where Vivienne's footsteps had faded. Yeah, she said. I'll be there. Elena didn't sleep again. She kept the evidence on 3 devices, her phone, her laptop, a USB drive hidden in her mother's old medical bag. If Vivienne wanted to erase her, she'd have to work for it. At 7 a.m., Alexander called an emergency household meeting. Vivienne was already in the living room. Cream Armani pantsuit, hair perfect. She stood by the windows like she owned the view. Colton sat on the couch, confused. Elena stood near the door, ready to run. I've received troubling reports, Alexander began. He looked at Elena, not warmly, about unauthorized access to confidential foundation records. Elena's blood went cold. Vivienne's voice was silk. Our IT flagged unusual activity on Colton's laptop yesterday. Financial files were accessed and photographed. I was helping him with homework, Elena said. By stealing proprietary documents? Vivienne held up her iPad. Our security system logs everything, dear. Colton stood. Wait, that's not... Sit down, Colton. Vivienne's voice went sharp, then back to silk. Corporate espionage is serious, Alexander. I'd hate to involve authorities, but... Do it, Elena said. Call them. I already did. Silence. Alexander's voice turned to ice. What? Elena pulled out her phone, showed the forwarded emails. Your foundation's books don't add up. Someone's been skimming donations for 18 months. About $340,000. I've got an FBI appointment in 90 minutes. Vivienne's smile didn't slip, but her eyes went dead. How dare you? How dare you? Elena's voice cracked. Stealing from a charity named after your sister? Bleeding this family dry while pretending to protect them. Alexander turned to Vivienne. Is this true? Of course not. She's a disgruntled employee. Colton interrupted. I saw the numbers too. The donations don't match. Vivienne's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Her face shifted. Excuse me, she said tightly. Urgent call. She left. 30 minutes later, Colton was late for school. Elena checked his room. Empty. His phone on the bed. A text from an unknown number. Rides waiting. Garage. Elena's heart stopped. She grabbed her medical bag and ran. The garage door was open. Black sedan speeding toward the service exit. Colton's backpack on the concrete. Elena ran. Reached the car at the gate. Colton was in the back seat, eyes wide, terrified. The driver pulled a gun. Back off. Elena didn't move. Let him out. This doesn't concern you. He's diabetic. Without his medication, he'll go into shock. You'll have a murder charge instead of whatever Vivienne's paying you. The man hesitated. Elena pressed her stethoscope against the window, listened. Colton's breathing was fast, shallow, panicked. He's hyperventilating, she said loudly. Stress-induced crash, 20 minutes before he's unconscious. Security alarms blared. Alexander's voice over the intercom. Gates locked. Police incoming. The driver cursed, shoved Colton out. Elena caught him, checked his pulse, pulled glucose tabs from her bag. Breathe. You're okay. Breathe. Alexander reached them, dropped to his knees, pulled them both into his arms. For the first time since Catherine died, he broke. Vivienne was arrested at SeaTac Airport 2 hours later, trying to board a flight to Grand Cayman. The FBI found $340,000 in offshore accounts and a burner phone. Text messages to the driver. Remove the complication. Make it look like an accident. The complication was Elena. The news broke within 2 hours. Hale Foundation, CFO, arrested for embezzlement and conspiracy to kidnap. Every outlet picked it up. King 5. Seattle Times. The national networks. The photos were devastating. Vivienne Ashford in handcuffs. Mascara running, hair disheveled. Being led through SeaTac Airport in her cream Armani suit while travelers stared and phones recorded. The FBI press conference was surgical. Special Agent Morrison stood at a podium, face expressionless. Vivienne Ashford systematically embezzled $340,000 from the Hale Foundation, a charity established to fund pediatric cancer research in memory of Catherine Hale. When Ms. Elena Brooks, a household employee, discovered financial discrepancies, Ms. Ashford conspired to have her and 15-year-old Colton Hale kidnapped and potentially killed. The cameras loved it. Billionaire family drama, corruption, a working-class hero. Elena watched from the Hale estate, Colton beside her on the couch. Alexander, standing at the window, phone ringing nonstop with reporters. The Seattle Times ran the headline 3 hours later, "From waitress to whistleblower, woman who saved the Hale family." The article detailed everything: Elena's nursing school dropout, her mother's death, the night she found Colton on the pier, how she'd turned down Alexander's reward money, how Vivienne humiliated her at the gala, how she stayed anyway. The fallout was immediate. Vivienne's bail hearing was standing room only. Federal prosecutors argued flight risk with offshore accounts and a history of witness intimidation. Bail denied. Her society friends vanished overnight. The women who'd kissed her cheeks at the gala now deleted photos, unfollowed her on Instagram, told reporters they'd always suspected something was off. The Hale Foundation installed independent auditors, recovered $310,000 from Vivienne's accounts, doubled their annual cancer research grants in Catherine's name. Vivienne got 18 months in federal prison, full restitution, permanent ban from serving on any nonprofit board in Washington state. But the real punishment was the silence. No visitors, no phone calls. The woman who'd spent 40 years curating connections discovered they were all transactional. Seattle society doesn't exile quietly. They erase you while you watch. 2 weeks after her arrest, a letter arrived at the Hale estate. Forwarded from the prison. Vivienne's handwriting, perfect cursive on prison stationery. "You ruined my life." 3 words. That was all. Elena showed Colton. "What should I write back?" He smiled. "Nothing. She's already screaming into a void. Don't give her an echo." Smart kid. Alexander held a press conference at Hale Foundation headquarters. No script, just raw honesty. "My family was broken," he said, cameras flashing. "We were drowning in grief. Elena Brooks had every reason to walk away. We gave her nothing but hardship. But she stayed, not for money, not for status. Because she saw a kid who needed help and decided that mattered more than her comfort. That's not charity, that's character." The clip went viral. 14 million views in 48 hours. Comments flooded in. "This is what real strength looks like." Vivienne underestimated the wrong woman. Elena Brooks is the hero we need. 3 months later, Elena's acceptance letter arrived. Seattle University School of Nursing, full scholarship, funded by the Hale Foundation. Alexander's handwriting on the attached note, "Finish what you started." Elena held the letter, looked at Colton. "You're leaving?" he asked quietly. "Just to school. I'll still be around 3 nights a week. Promise." Promise. She meant it. Elena started nursing school that fall. She moved into student housing near Seattle University, smaller than the Hale estate, louder, smelled like top ramen and coffee, familiar. But 3 nights a week, she still came to the house, checked Colton's levels, helped with homework, made sure he was eating, he was doing better, gained 12 pounds, smiled more, stopped skipping insulin injections. "I'm thinking pre-med," he said one night over takeout Thai food. "Maybe pediatric endocrinology. Help kids like me." Alexander looked up from his laptop. Really? Yeah. Someone's gotta. Colton glanced at Elena. She proved regular people can save lives better than rich people with degrees. Elena's eyes stung. She didn't let the tears fall. 6 months after Vivienne's arrest, Alexander asked Elena to meet him at Pier 19, the same spot where she'd found Colton. They stood in the cold, watching ferries cross Elliott Bay. City lights shimmered on black water. "I've been thinking," Alexander said quietly, "about that night, what you said when I tried to pay you." "I said a lot that night." "You said you didn't do it for a reward." He turned to her. "But I want to give you something anyway. Not money, not a job." "Then what?" "A choice." His voice was steady, but his eyes were vulnerable. "Before you came, this house was just expensive square footage. You made it feel like a home. Not because you decorated, because you cared when caring was inconvenient." The ferry horn sounded across the water, low and mournful. "If you want to leave," Alexander continued, "to focus on school, build your own life, I'll support that. You don't owe us anything, but if you choose to stay," he paused, "just tell me." Elena smiled gently. "What am I to you, Alexander?" He reached for her hand, slowly. Asking permission, she let him take it. "The first person in 2 years who made me believe I could feel something other than grief." Elena squeezed his hand. "I'm not here to fix you. I've got my own life to build." "I know, Colin, but where I live doesn't matter, as long as someone still needs the kindness I can give." They stood in silence. His hand was warm. 3 years later, Elena graduated top of her class. Colton, 17 now, healthy, applying to Stanford pre-med, gave the speech at her graduation party. "Elena taught me that family isn't blood or money. It's who shows up when you're broken and stays until you remember how to be whole." That night, Elena pulled out her mother's stethoscope. The navy blue Littman that had saved Colton twice. She handed it to him. "Your mom would have wanted you to have this. You're going to help a lot of kids. Make sure you listen." He took it carefully. "What about you?" Elena smiled. "I've got a new one. But that one's for the next person who needs to remember that saving lives is the only wealth that matters. My mama used to say, everybody's somebody. That night on the pier, I was somebody to a kid I'd never met. Turned out he was somebody to me too. Vivienne thought power came from money and connections. She was wrong. Real power? It's knowing when to stop for a stranger, when to stay for a kid, when to fight for what's right, even when it costs you everything. That's the kind of rich you can't steal. Can't fake, can't buy. You either got it or you don't.